The twin suns of Zytheria blazed across the sky, painting the jagged mountains and crystal plains with golden light. The planet was alive with movement, towering structures hummed with alien energy, and ships glided silently across the horizon. For centuries, Zytheria had been known for its warriors, a civilization where strength, speed, and skill in combat were everything. At the heart of the capital city, the great arena of Zytheria rose like a monument to power. Its walls shimmered with energy fields that could withstand meteor strikes. Within its vast interior, thousands of Zytherians gathered, eager for the daily exhibition of combat and skill. Among them, one figure stood taller than the rest, not in height, but in presence. Princess Kyra, the warrior princess, stood proudly on the central platform. Her armor gleamed in the sunlight, etched with symbols of victories past. Her spear, tipped with plasma, radiated power. To the Zytherians, she was untouchable, a living legend. Yet today, something unusual had arrived. A human, a species considered weak and fragile, had stepped onto their world. Ethan, dressed in a simple spacesuit, stepped down from his small shuttle. His eyes scanned the arena, curious but calm. He knew little of Zytheria's culture, but he understood that survival here would require courage, and perhaps more than courage, ingenuity. The Zytherian crowd erupted in laughter when they saw him. Humans were tiny, soft, and untrained compared to their own warriors. Murmurs filled the arena. "That thing, it's a human?" one warrior whispered. "It won't last a minute," another scoffed. Kyra's violet eyes narrowed. She had been told about humans before they were weak, fragile, incapable of true combat. She stepped forward, her armor glinting under the twin suns. "You won't last a minute, human," she declared, her voice ringing across the arena. Her tone was full of disdain, but also curiosity. What foolish human had the audacity to enter her world unprepared? Ethan lifted his head, meeting her gaze. He did not speak harshly, nor did he seem afraid. "I didn't come to fight to show weakness," he said simply. "I came to prove that humans can endure and adapt." A murmur of surprise ran through the crowd. Some warriors laughed nervously. Others were intrigued. Kyra, however, smirked. "Adapt? You? Against me? You are dreaming, human." She tightened her grip on her spear. "Very well. I will teach you a lesson." The arena's energy fields shifted, and the platform beneath them lit up with patterns that marked the start of the trial of strength, a combat test that had been used for generations to determine the mightiest warriors of Zytheria. No human had ever survived it. Ethan's eyes swept the arena. He noticed the subtle details, the way the energy fields could be used, the angles of the platforms, and the small gaps in the shields. He didn't need brute strength. He needed strategy. His fingers tightened around a small, simple device at his belt, a human invention. It could manipulate magnetic fields temporarily. He smiled faintly. "Ready." Kyra lunged first. Her movements were a blur, faster than anything Ethan had ever seen. She swung her spear with deadly precision, aiming to strike him down in a single motion. But Ethan had learned to observe patterns quickly. He dodged in a way that was unexpected, not with raw speed, but with timing that threw off her rhythm. She stumbled slightly, the first sign of imperfection in her flawless style. The crowd gasped. Kyra recovered instantly, spinning and striking again. But Ethan used his environment cleverly. He triggered small magnetic pulses, diverting some of her energy attacks away from himself. Sparks flew as her plasma spear connected with the arena's shield instead of him. The human was surviving, no. He was adapting. Kyra's violet eyes widened with curiosity. She had never faced an opponent who fought like this, not with brute force, nor with alien techniques, but with cleverness, timing, and observation. She increased her attacks, moving faster, striking harder, but Ethan kept dodging. He used the arena's platforms to his advantage, leaping, sliding, and sometimes simply standing his ground. forcing her to change her strategy. You are not like any human I have heard of, Kira muttered under her breath. She realized that this human had something her warriors often lacked: the ability to think differently under pressure. Every move he made was small, almost ordinary, but together, they created a shield no spear could pierce. Ethan, despite the glaring attacks and the energy radiating from Kira's armor, felt calm. He was not trying to overpower her. He was learning, observing, and responding. His human body had limitations, yes, but his mind was a tool as sharp as any weapon. He dodged another strike, then redirected Kyra's momentum with a quick push. She stumbled forward, surprised, nearly losing her balance for the first time in front of the arena's audience. The crowd was silent. Silence in Zytheria was rare, especially when it came to combat. Even the elders, watching from their high seats, were whispering among themselves. The human was not only surviving, he was challenging the legend of their princess. Kyra's face was a mix of frustration and fascination. She had trained for decades, defeated hundreds of opponents. And yet this human was something new. Something unpredictable. Interesting, she said aloud, almost to herself. Perhaps humans are not as weak as I thought. Ethan lowered his stance slightly, signaling respect. Strength is not always measured by speed or power, he said. Sometimes it is measured by how quickly you learn and how well you adapt. Kyra paused, her spear still raised. No one had ever spoken to her this way during combat. She realized that this human was teaching her something without words, through resilience, courage, and cleverness. The trial of strength was far from over. Kyra knew that if she attacked without thought, she could easily defeat him. But every attack now required planning, strategy, and observation. For the first time, she was facing an opponent who made her think as much as she fought. And Ethan? He was smiling faintly, knowing that the real test had just begun. He had arrived as a human, considered weak and fragile. But now, in the heart of Zytheria, he had already earned a place in their minds, and perhaps their respect. As the suns of Zytheria began to sink lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the arena, the stage was set. Kyra tightened her grip on her spear, and Ethan shifted his stance, ready for whatever came next. The battle had begun, but this was more than a fight. It was the beginning of a story where humanity would show its true strength. The arena of Zytheria vibrated with anticipation. Thousands of alien eyes focused on the human and the warrior princess, waiting for the next move. Kyra, her violet eyes sharp and calculating, circled Ethan with graceful but deadly steps. Each movement radiated confidence, a predator aware of its prey. But Ethan did not appear afraid. He simply studied her, observing the rhythm of her attacks, the way she shifted her weight, and the flow of her movements. "You think you can stand against me?" Kira asked, her voice carrying authority and amusement. Her spear hummed with plasma energy, glowing brighter with every heartbeat. "You're just a human. You cannot match Zytherian's speed." Ethan shook his head gently, keeping his hands free and relaxed. "I don't need your speed," he said calmly. "I just need to survive long enough to learn." Kyra's lips curled into a small, sharp smile. "Then let's see how long that lasts." With a sudden burst, she lunged forward, her spear aiming for Ethan's chest. The crowd gasped at her speed. She moved faster than any human could follow. With the naked eye, Ethan's first instinct was to dodge, but instead, he chose to use Kyra's momentum against her. As she struck, he sidestepped at the last moment and lightly tapped her shoulder, redirecting her forward movement toward the arena's energy barrier. Kyra stumbled slightly but recovered instantly. A murmur spread across the audience. Humans had never shown such control. They were considered fragile, unable to anticipate or counter advanced attacks. Yet here, Ethan had survived Kyra's first strike with calm, clever thinking, not brute strength. Kyra's violet eyes narrowed. She increased her attacks, swinging her spear in wide arcs, spinning and thrusting with precision. Ethan ducked, rolled, and leaped, never attacking yet, only surviving, always observing. Each time he moved, He adjusted his stance slightly, studying how her strikes followed one another. He noticed patterns, subtle repetitions in her style. "I see," Kira muttered under her breath. "This human is clever. He is learning." The arena's spectators leaned forward, their whispers filling the air. No one had ever seen a human move like this. Some warriors frowned, some were curious, and some, the younger ones, cheered silently for the underdog. Kira feinted to the left, then swung her spear to the right, with blinding speed. Ethan's heart raced, but his mind stayed calm. He had trained for unpredictable situations. Using the arena's platform edges, he jumped and twisted mid-air, allowing her spear to pass harmlessly beneath him. Landing softly, he activated a small device from his belt. It emitted a brief magnetic pulse, causing her spear to slightly repel away from him, forcing Kira to adjust her balance. The crowd gasped again. Even the elders murmured in astonishment. Kira, the unbeatable princess, had been momentarily unsettled by a human. Kira took a deep breath, tightening her grip. "Interesting," she said aloud. "You are not like any opponent I have faced. Humans are usually easy to overpower. But you are different." Ethan smiled faintly, keeping his stance ready. "I told you," he said. "Humans survive by adapting. Strength alone is not enough." The next moments were a blur of motion. Kira struck with a series of rapid thrusts, her spear moving faster than the eye could follow. Ethan dodged some, blocked others using small shields he had crafted for defense, and countered subtly using his environment. When she aimed a downward strike, he rolled forward under her legs, causing her momentum to carry her past him. He barely touched her shoulder, a light tap that nudged her off balance again, a reminder that humans were not to be underestimated. Kira's expression was a mixture of frustration and fascination. She had trained for decades to fight warriors who relied on skill, strength, and speed. None had taught her anything new. None had made her adjust, think, or reconsider. Yet here was a human, fragile by Zetherian standards, surviving, not just surviving, but forcing her to change her approach. "You are clever, human," she admitted, her voice low. "But cleverness will not be enough to defeat me." Ethan took a small step back, observing the arena. His eyes caught subtle details. He could exploit the slight gaps in the energy field, the timing of the moving platforms, the flow of energy across the arena floor. He realized that brute force could not win this fight. He needed strategy, timing, and creativity. Kira lunged again, this time with a spinning strike, aiming to sweep Ethan off his feet. He ducked and rolled to the side. Using the corner of a platform to propel himself upward, he landed behind her, briefly appearing as if he had teleported. The crowd gasped. "Impossible!" a young warrior shouted. Kira's expression changed. Surprise, followed quickly by respect. "This human, he moves like water," she said under her breath. "He adapts, flows, and finds openings I cannot predict." The battle continued, each strike and movement a test of skill, wit, and resilience. Ethan was not the strongest, nor the fastest, but he observed, learned, and adapted faster than any opponent Kira had ever faced. He used small tricks, redirecting her strikes with minimal force, leveraging platforms to evade, and using the arena's energy fields to his advantage. By now, the crowd was silent, captivated by the spectacle. The human was not only surviving but forcing the legendary princess to fight differently than she ever had. Even her closest warriors, who had trained their entire lives alongside her, watched in awe. Kira paused for a brief moment, breathing steadily, eyes locked on Ethan. You are not what I expected," she admitted. "There is strength in you that is not physical. It is will, mind, and courage." Ethan smiled faintly. "That is how humans survive," he said simply. "We adapt. We endure. We find a way even when the odds seem impossible." Kira's grip on her spear tightened. The next attack would be her strongest, her most precise, her ultimate test of strength. But she no longer underestimated him. He was small, fragile by Zetherian standards. But there was something about his mind, his spirit, and his resilience that made her respect him as a worthy opponent. The suns of Zetheria shone brightly over the arena, casting long, dramatic shadows across the fighters. The stage was set for a battle unlike any Zetheria had ever seen. Kira prepared to strike with all her might, and Ethan braced himself, ready to prove that humans were not to be underestimated, not by speed, strength, or even the mightiest warrior in the galaxy. The first clash had ended, but the real battle was just beginning. The arena of Zetheria had fallen into a tense silence. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if the planet itself was watching the battle between the human and the warrior princess. Kira, her violet eyes sharp and unyielding, now recognized that Ethan was unlike any opponent she had ever faced. Every movement of his, every decision he made, showed not brute strength but something far more dangerous. Intelligence, under pressure. You survive because you are clever, Kira said, her voice tight with a mix of frustration and admiration. But cleverness alone will not defeat me. Ethan adjusted his stance, observing the arena carefully. His eyes flicked to the glowing energy fields around them, noting how they pulsed in rhythm with the twin suns. He realized that these fields could be used to his advantage if he timed his movements precisely. He did not rush forward or attack blindly. Instead, he waited, letting Kira commit to her next strike so he could use her energy against her. Kira lunged with a sudden speed that blurred her figure. Her spear cut through the air with deadly intent, aiming straight for Ethan's chest. He rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the plasma tip, and tapped a small panel on his belt. A pulse of magnetism rippled across the platform, pushing her spear slightly off course. Kira's eyes widened in surprise. Her spear had never been deflected by a human before. You are clever, but do not think you can outlast me, Kira shouted. She spun in midair, using her momentum to launch a spinning strike that would sweep anyone off their feet. Ethan leaped onto a higher platform just in time, landing silently and observing her reaction. The audience gasped. No human had ever moved like this, weaving through the attacks of Zytheria's most feared warrior. Murmurs spread across the stands. Is he really human? A young warrior whispered. How can he move so calmly under such pressure? Kira narrowed her eyes, her pride pricked by the realization that she was being challenged in ways she had never expected. She decided it was time to test Ethan more seriously. With a fierce cry, she summoned her secondary weapon, a plasma whip that crackled with blue energy. She lashed it toward Ethan, aiming not to hit him, but to force him into a defensive position. Ethan reacted immediately, using the platform's energy rails to propel himself backward. The whip struck the rail, causing sparks to fly. He glanced around, calculating his next move. He noticed that Kira's movements, though fast and precise, were patterned. Every strike had a rhythm, a repetition he could predict if he paid close attention. Using this observation, he began to plan. He didn't need to fight her head-on. Instead, he would anticipate her strikes, redirect them, and create openings for himself. When Kira swung her spear again, he ducked low, grabbed a nearby magnetic panel, and redirected the energy pulse toward her whip. The whip flickered and lost its balance, giving Ethan a brief window to move closer. Kira's violet eyes narrowed in surprise. Impressive, she muttered, almost to herself. This human learns faster than any warrior I've faced. She regained her focus and lunged again. Faster than before. Ethan sidestepped and tapped another control on his belt. A small magnetic field projected beneath his feet, allowing him to slide across the platform at high speed, avoiding her next strike. The movement was unexpected, almost like teleportation to the untrained eye. The crowd erupted in excitement. Even Kira's closest allies were leaning forward, astonished. You humans are unpredictable, Kira said through gritted teeth. But strength and skill will always prevail. Ethan smiled faintly. Strength alone is not enough, he replied. It's the mind, courage, and adaptability that matter. Kyra lunged again, and this time, Ethan made his move. Instead of dodging, he used her momentum against her. As she swung her spear downward, he sidestepped and gently tapped her shoulder, redirecting her spin. Kyra stumbled, barely regaining her balance before hitting the ground. The audience gasped. The unbeatable princess had been momentarily off balance by a human's subtle touch. Kyra's pride flared. She had defeated countless warriors without breaking a sweat. But now, for the first time, she faced someone who forced her to think, to adapt, and to respect him as a fighter. Her attacks became sharper, faster, and more precise. But Ethan continued to survive. Learning with every strike, the two circled each other, the tension between them almost tangible. Kyra's spear hummed with energy, her whip crackling beside her. Ethan's breathing was steady, his mind focused, calculating every possibility. He realized that brute force could never win here. He needed to outthink her, outmaneuver her, and show her that humans were not to be underestimated. "You have endurance," Kyra admitted, her voice quieter now. "And courage. But endurance alone does not make a warrior." "I don't rely on endurance alone," Ethan said. "I rely on adaptation, observation, and action. Humans survive because we find ways when there seems to be none." Kyra's expression softened, a flicker of respect appearing amidst her determination. She lunged again, but this time her movements carried a hint of caution. She was testing him, yes, but she was also learning from him, noticing his strategies and anticipating his adaptations. The battle continued, each strike more intense than the last. Sparks flew as Kyra's spear clashed with arena panels, energy pulses shimmered across the platforms, and Ethan's clever maneuvers drew cheers and gasps from the spectators. The human was not only surviving, he was forcing the princess to fight differently, to think differently, and to respect a new kind of strength. For the first time in her life, Kyra felt challenged not just physically, but mentally. Ethan was showing her a truth she had never considered: that strength could take many forms. Humanity's strength was not in raw power alone, but in intelligence, creativity, and the courage to endure against impossible odds. The twin suns of Xitheria dipped lower, casting long shadows across the arena. Kyra paused for a brief moment, breathing steadily, eyes fixed on Ethan. He had survived wave after wave of her attacks, adapting, learning, and even countering subtly. She realized that this was no ordinary human. This was a fighter who embodied resilience, courage, and ingenuity, the true strength of his species. Kyra lifted her spear once more, her expression resolute. "Very well, human," she said, almost softly. "Let us see how far your cleverness can take you. The real test begins now." Ethan nodded, ready. The first clash had ended, but the battle was far from over. Kyra was learning, adapting, and respecting him as a warrior. And Ethan? He was prepared to show that humans could not only survive but thrive in the face of the galaxy's fiercest fighters. The arena trembled with anticipation. Every spectator, every warrior, and every leader present knew that history was being made. A human had survived the first clash against the greatest warrior of Xitheria, and the story was just beginning. The sun hung low over the crystal plains of Xitheria, casting long, golden shadows across the arena. Kyra and Ethan faced each other, breathing steadily, each waiting for the other's next move. The air was thick with tension, but also with a quiet respect that had begun to grow between them. Kyra tightened her grip on her plasma spear. Her violet eyes were sharper than ever, analyzing Ethan's every motion. Unlike before, she now recognized patterns, not weaknesses, but strengths disguised as simplicity. Every dodge, every step, every subtle use of the environment by Ethan was deliberate. He was not just surviving. He was learning, anticipating, and even subtly guiding her attacks in ways she had never seen. "You have endurance, courage, and cleverness," Kyra said, her voice calm but firm. "But you are still human. You have limits." Ethan smiled faintly, adjusting his stance. Limits exist for everyone, he said. The difference is what you do when you reach them. Humans find ways to push beyond. Kyra's lips twitched with a mix of amusement and challenge. She lunged forward, faster than ever, her spear spinning like a blade of light. Ethan ducked low, narrowly avoiding the strike, and rolled to the side. This time, instead of retreating, he used the arena's magnetic field to propel himself toward her, closing the distance with calculated speed. Kyra's eyes widened. Impressive, she admitted. Her spear was poised to strike again. But Ethan had already anticipated it. He grabbed a small panel on the arena floor and activated it, sending a controlled pulse of energy toward her weapon. The pulse deflected the spear slightly, just enough to throw off her aim. The audience erupted in astonishment. Every Zetherian had grown up believing humans were weak, fragile, and incapable of combat. Yet here was Ethan, a human, not only surviving but controlling the flow of battle. Murmurs of admiration spread quickly, and even some of Kyra's elite warriors exchanged glances, realizing that this human was unlike any opponent they had ever seen. Kyra took a deep breath, lowering her spear slightly. She had always believed that strength and skill alone determined a warrior's worth, but Ethan was teaching her something new, something that went beyond speed, power, or technique. He was showing her the strength of adaptability, courage, and intellect combined. You humans are surprising, Kyra said, her voice quieter now, almost reflective. I never thought one could fight like this without Zetherian training. Ethan nodded. Humans survive because we find ways. We learn, we adapt, and we endure. Strength is not always physical, it is in the mind and the spirit as well. Kyra considered his words, then attacked again, faster and more aggressively. She struck with all her training and experience, but Ethan continued to dodge, using a combination of quick reflexes, environmental awareness, and creative thinking. He did not merely avoid her attacks, he subtly guided them, causing her to expend more energy, opening small gaps in her rhythm. Kyra's frustration was mixed with admiration. She had never faced an opponent who made her think during combat, who forced her to adjust, who refused to break under pressure. With every strike, she saw more clearly the unique resilience of humanity, their ability to endure, to find clever solutions, and to persevere when all seemed impossible. Then, in a daring move, Ethan used the arena itself as a tool. He leapt onto a slightly raised platform and used the magnetic fields beneath his feet to spin and launch himself toward Kyra. She struck downward with her spear, but Ethan twisted mid-air, causing her own momentum to carry her past him. He landed lightly, facing her, and raised his hands in a gesture of respect rather than attack. Kyra froze, astonished. She had expected humans to break, to falter, to be overwhelmed. Yet here he stood, unbroken, calm, and composed. She realized that this human embodied a strength she had never seen, a combination of courage, intelligence, and determination that made him a true warrior in his own right. For a moment, the arena was silent, except for the hum of energy fields. The spectators watched, captivated. Kyra lowered her spear completely, her expression shifting from challenge to contemplation. You are remarkable, she said softly. I underestimated humans. I see now that strength is not always measured by speed, power, or skill alone. It is measured by will, courage, and the ability to endure and adapt. Ethan smiled faintly, acknowledging her words. That is the truth of humanity, he said simply. We survive not because we are the strongest, but because we never give up. We find a way, even when the odds are impossible. Kyra nodded slowly, her eyes meeting his. She realized that she had been wrong to assume humans were weak. This one human had survived the trial of strength, not by being stronger than her, but by being different, clever, and unyielding. He had forced her to see that true power could take many forms. You have taught me something, Kyra admitted. Perhaps humans are not to be underestimated. Perhaps strength is more than physical power. Ethan inclined his head respectfully. And perhaps Zetherians are not just warriors, he said. You fight not just with skill, but with honor. That makes you formidable as well. The two faced each other in silence for a moment, each gaining a deeper understanding of the other. Kyra, who had always believed in strength as the ultimate measure, now recognized the value of resilience, creativity, and intelligence. Ethan, who had always believed in human adaptability, saw the precision, discipline, and courage of Zetherian warriors. The suns dipped further, painting the arena with fiery colors. The audience, once skeptical of the human, now watched with awe and admiration. Ethan had survived wave after wave of attacks, adapting, learning, and showing that humans could endure and thrive even in the face of the galaxy's fiercest warriors. Kyra raised her spear again. But this time her stance was different. She was no longer merely attacking. She was testing, exploring, and learning. Ethan met her gaze, ready for whatever came next. The respect between them was clear. The battle was no longer just about victory, it was about understanding, about mutual recognition, and about the revelation of human strength in its truest form. The arena hummed with energy and anticipation. The spectators realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. A human standing tall against the greatest warrior of Zetheria. Not by overpowering her, but by demonstrating courage, intelligence, and unyielding will. As the sun touched the horizon, Kyra and Ethan prepared for the next stage of the trial. The respect between them had grown, and the true battle, the test of strength, strategy, and spirit, was only beginning. The story of the human on Zetheria was no longer just about survival. It was about changing perceptions, earning respect, and proving that humanity's strength was unique and undeniable. The arena of Zetheria glowed under the last rays of the twin suns, the air thick with anticipation. Kyra, the warrior princess, and Ethan, the human, faced each other once more. Unlike before, there was no hostility in their eyes, only respect, curiosity, and recognition of each other's strength. Kyra lifted her plasma spear, the glow of its tip matching the fire in her eyes. She had fought countless warriors, defeated the strongest fighters of Zetheria. Yet here was a human who had survived, adapted, and even challenged her in ways no Zetherian ever had. She inhaled deeply, preparing for a final test not just of strength, but of ingenuity, courage, and character. Ethan stood tall, calm, and steady. He had learned much from their battle, the timing of Kyra's attacks, her patterns, and her thought process. He had survived every strike, adapted to every challenge, and now he understood that the final stage of this trial would require more than cleverness or agility. It would require trust, timing, and an understanding of the warrior before him. Kyra lunged first, faster and more precise than ever. Her spear moved like a bolt of lightning, spinning and twisting toward him with deadly intent. Ethan sidestepped, then pivoted, using the arena's magnetic fields to propel himself upward. He landed lightly on a raised platform, eyes never leaving Kyra. With a subtle motion, he triggered a small pulse, redirecting the force of her strike just enough to create an opening. Kyra adjusted instantly, her violet eyes narrowing in recognition. "You anticipate too well, human," she said aloud. "You are learning faster than any warrior I have faced." Ethan nodded, though he did not speak. Words were unnecessary. The battle itself communicated everything. He was proving the strength of humanity not through raw power, but through adaptation, intelligence, and courage. The next minutes were a blur of motion. Kyra attacked with her spear, then her plasma whip, combining speed, precision, and power in ways few could match. Ethan dodged, weaved, and used the arena to his advantage, redirecting energy pulses, slipping past strikes, and sometimes simply standing firm to force her to adjust. Each exchange taught them something new. Kyra realized that Ethan's human resilience was not stubbornness, but a unique combination of mind, body, and spirit. He did not merely survive. He learned, adapted, and even guided her movements, showing a cleverness and understanding she had never seen. And then came the moment that changed everything. Kyra launched a full-force strike, aiming to end the trial once and for all. Her spear spun with deadly energy, aimed directly at Ethan. Time seemed to slow as he calculated the risks. He did not dodge immediately. Instead, he waited for the perfect moment, using every bit of observation and intuition he had gained from their battle. With precise timing, he sidestepped, redirected the energy of her strike with a small magnetic pulse, and lightly tapped her shoulder not to harm her, but to unbalance her just enough. Kyra stumbled, her spear spinning past her. For the first time, the princess of Scytheria had been outmaneuvered, not by brute force, but by human ingenuity and spirit. The arena erupted in astonishment. The crowd, once skeptical of humans, now cheered with excitement and admiration. The elders whispered among themselves, realizing that this human had done what no other Scytherian had ever done, survived the trial of strength while teaching the greatest warrior of their civilization a new perspective on power. Kyra, catching her balance, lowered her spear completely. Her violet eyes shone with respect, her breathing steady. You have done what no other has," she said softly. "You are not only strong but wise. You have taught me something I never expected. That true strength is not just physical power. It is will, courage, intelligence, and the ability to adapt." Ethan nodded. "That is the truth of humanity," he said calmly. "We survive, not because we are the strongest, but because we refuse to give up. We endure, adapt, and find solutions when others see none." Kyra studied him for a long moment, then smiled a rare, genuine smile that few had ever seen. "You have earned my respect, human," she said. "You are a warrior in every sense of the word, not because of strength alone, but because of your courage, intelligence, and spirit." The crowd erupted in applause. Scytherians who had doubted humans now saw them in a new light. Ethan had proven that humanity's strength was unique, resilient, and worthy of respect across the galaxy. Kyra stepped forward and extended her hand. "I am Kyra, Princess of Scytheria, and you, human, are now recognized as a true warrior." Ethan shook her hand firmly, smiling. "I am Ethan, from Earth, and it is an honor to stand here with you." The two warriors stood side by side, a symbol of mutual respect and understanding between two very different species. The crowd cheered louder than ever, celebrating not just a victory in combat, but the triumph of courage, ingenuity, and spirit. In the following days, Ethan was invited to train with the elite warriors of Scytheria. He shared his knowledge of human ingenuity, strategy, and problem-solving, while learning their techniques, discipline, and combat mastery. Kyra, once skeptical of humans, became a close ally and friend. Together, they trained, sparred, and shared knowledge, forging a partnership that bridged their worlds. The trial of strength became a historic event. Humans were no longer seen as fragile or weak. They were recognized as a species with endurance, intelligence, and courage capable of standing alongside the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Ethan and Kyra's partnership also opened the door to greater alliances between humans and Scytherians. Trade, knowledge exchange, and cooperative missions were initiated, creating a bond that strengthened both civilizations. The story of a human surviving the trial of strength became a legend, inspiring generations to come. Kyra often reflected on the trial and the lessons she had learned. Strength was more than power. It was the ability to endure, to think, to adapt, and to act with courage. Ethan had shown her that humans, though different, possessed qualities that made them formidable, honorable, and inspiring. Ethan, too, reflected on his journey. Humanity had always survived against the odds, not because they were the strongest, but because they were clever, resourceful, and unyielding. Scytheria had shown him that strength came in many forms, and that respect, understanding, and alliance were as important as courage and skill. As the sons of Zytheria set behind the crystal mountains, Kyra and Ethan trained together in the quiet arena. The energy fields shimmered softly around them, and the hum of the planet seemed to echo their newfound alliance. They were no longer just princess and human, they were symbols of unity, respect, and the remarkable strength of their species. The story of that human, who would not give up, who adapted, endured, and earned the respect of the greatest warrior in the galaxy, would be told for generations. It was a story of courage, ingenuity, and the unmistakable power of humanity, a story that proved to the universe that humans were a species to be reckoned with. And so, on Zytheria, under the twin suns, a warrior princess and a human stood together, ready for whatever the galaxy might challenge them with next. For strength, they both knew, was not just in the body, it was in the heart, the mind, and the spirit. Humanity had shown its worth, and the galaxy would never forget it.